Hello
Hello.
and welcome to That'll Be the Tism, episode 19 of our podcast about our lives as late diagnosed and discovered autistic and ADHD adults.
Yeah, that's what we are.
Welcome. I am Emma and you are Claire.
Oh yeah, I am.
We have a few new listeners. So I thought it's nice to sort of tell people who we are a little bit.
Oh, maybe a bit of a New Year's reintroduction.
Oh, yeah, and Happy New Year to all of
hmm
our lovely listeners because it is going to be the future when you listen to this, and we will have hopefully successfully transitioned into 2026.
I don't think so.
I hope that the world doesn't end because that would make this a colossal waste of time. Not that talking is
Oh, I
ever
didn't
a
mean
waste of
that. I
time.
just mean when you write in the date and you
Oh,
write
yeah, no,
in 2025 for the next 3 months. I
at
didn't mean
least
like the world was going to end before 2026 because that would be, it's possible, but
before
that
the
would be
4th. And
unfortunate.
this is released. So, yes, welcome to our new listeners. I am going to talk a little bit about why not why we have new listeners, because obviously we have new listeners because we're amazing and brilliant and hilarious.
Are you going to introduce yourself? Are we introducing ourselves again now, or are we not?
You can go and listen to the trailer if you want to know more about us or why we're doing this. But basically, I'm Emma.
I'm too sure about that then. I think that's.
I think I'm Emma, and I have known Claire for a long time since 2002,
Hmm.
which is
24 years this year, won't it?
2023 will be, yeah, May
Mm.
26th. We have been friends for a very long time, and then Claire got her Tism diagnosis.
I got the diagnosis, didn't I? And I'm like, what do I do now? And my go-to is like podcasts and things because I'm not great at reading sometimes. And there were a few, but not recently updated. But I've not come across a lot of ones yet that are like chats that are essentially the chats we were having in voice notes anyway,
Yes,
and have had in voice notes anyway for the past nearly 24 now, because WhatsApp didn't exist then, for a long time.
it was MSN to start with
Hmm,
back in the day.
yeah, so we've had these conversations for a long time, and I didn't know that I was autistic until I got my diagnosis. Well, I did sort of know, but I got my diagnosis last December, so it's just been a year
Mhm.
for me.
And I found out about ADHD first. I'm ADHD. Found out about my ADHD in February 2021. So I'm coming up to 5 years since I found out about ADHD. And then after a long and irritating wait and various different things, I was diagnosed in August 2024, and I'm still waiting for my autism diagnosis. When I got my ADHD diagnosis, they wrote waiting official autism diagnosis, and the NHS wouldn't diagnose me with ADHD, and I had to go back for a second opinion because they said I had to go and get an autism assessment first because of my autistic traits. And at the time, I was like, "What autistic traits? I don't have any autistic traits." And then, obviously, since then, lots has happened. So yeah, we decided to just have a podcast ourselves and chat through things, and we talk about autism and we talk about random animal facts often and
Hmm.
random other things about our lives. And it's all right, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you are new here, welcome.
Don't have to listen to all of the episodes,
You
but there
don't.
are a lot of them at this stage.
There
It
are
would
quite a
take
lot.
you almost an entire day to listen to us,
Oh,
so we'll
wow.
forgive you if you don't.
Feel free to pick in the show notes of each episode is a little summary of what we talk about, and sometimes they may not be relevant, although they're obviously all brilliant. They apparently did get better after the first few. So if you do listen to this and go back to episode 1, maybe work backwards instead of forwards. I know that's a really nice autistic way to do things.
Mm.
And the amount of podcasts that I've got on my to listen to list that I have to start at episode 1 rather than the current episode. So I haven't actually started because I'm like, no, they're on episode like 340 and I need to go back and start at the beginning and listen to them all. And that's not really very feasible. At least we're more feasible than that.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm.
And you don't have to
So,
have listened to them all for things to make sense. And generally, if we reference something from a previous episode, we'll let you know which episode it was
yeah,
in case you do want to listen to it. But you
yeah,
don't.
we do refer specifically to things because then it's just easier to find and makes more sense.
But we're reintroducing ourselves because we've got some new listeners.
Yes.
And we think that the reason why we've got some new listeners is because of a post of yours on social media that has had a lot of views.
Yeah, so I guess normally I ask you how you've been doing first, but I guess I can talk about how
Oh
I've
no,
been doing.
everything's awful. I mean, I can tell you how I am.
It's fine. We'll go with me first. That's okay. Yeah, so generally we start with hyperfocuses of the week or how we've been doing and what we've been doing. And it has just been Christmas, so in theory that should have been my hyperfocus of the week. And it partly has been, but also I did a post on social media about what an autistic meltdown looks like for you as an adult because I had quite a few conversations in my work. I work predominantly with late diagnosed neurodivergent people as a coach and about meltdowns or things that had shown up in their lives that I was like, have you considered that might have been a meltdown or they might have had a meltdown or da da da, various different things. And then I had a meltdown of my own. And we spoke about meltdowns in episode 10, which was Les Puzzles. That was about a 10-minute segment.
Oh,
And it was Claire's hyperfocus of the week. But I wanted to do a post about it because it was really important and it had been playing on my mind a little bit. And it's had like 35,000 views on Facebook. So it's gone a little bit mad. It's the most successful post by a long way that I've ever done on Facebook. And we've had a few new followers. I've had some followers on my Facebook. The podcast have some followers on Facebook. We've had a couple of messages from people. And so, yeah, I've been mildly obsessive over checking the stats. So that's been my hyperfocus of the week. And basically, I had a meltdown. We have fake Christmas with my fiance's best friend and her family and they are basically chosen family for us. And we have a fake Christmas with them the weekend before actual Christmas, where we have a proper Christmas dinner and exchange presents and spend the day at one of our houses. And we went to their house, and on the way, I broke. My brain broke, and it was such a small trigger that it was almost completely insane. Or at least that's how it felt. I knew at the time that I was being completely unreasonable because basically what happened was I had an awkward conversation with some friends and lost track of time. And my fiance was being helpful by wrapping the Christmas presents to take to our friend's house for fake Christmas. But I had it in my head that I was going to go downstairs and wrap them with my son, and that was going to be the order of events. And then we were going to go. And when I went downstairs, the presents were already wrapped. And what I wanted to do was thank him, and what I couldn't do was thank him. And I just basically went and stood in the garage and like breathed and then managed to get in the car and was about halfway there before I started crying. And then I cried and cried and cried for about 40 minutes. And it was an unpleasant time. And I haven't, because I started titration of ADHD medication about 5 weeks ago. And I haven't been able to cry really since I started that. And because previously I have been a crier, it's like the lid came off and I just broke and I couldn't stop crying. And it was unpleasant. And I'm like, when we spoke about meltdowns in Les Puzzles, I spoke about anger because I've always been emotional and expressive, but my meltdowns have previously been more rage that I couldn't control, whereas this was I just couldn't stop crying. So it was quite new. I think it's probably going to be less memorable because nobody else was really impacted. I mean, they obviously were because they were all in the house doing their thing, and I was sat in the car outside on my own crying. And then I messaged my fiance and said, "Can't stop crying, don't know what to do." And he came out and sat with me for a little bit, but it wasn't impacting anyone else. And I think that part of the reason why anger based meltdowns stick more in the head is because they impact other people and then we ruminate on them potentially. So I am hoping that I forget about this one. But it did prompt this post that has been related to by a lot of people, it seems. So if you are here due to that post, then welcome. If you're here due to another post, then welcome anyway. But I hope that you can find some relatability and common ground in what we talk about on a fortnightly basis. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's basically me and my meltdowns.
I
Um,
just think you were saying about being unreasonable. I think that we often think that we're being unreasonable,
yeah.
and it's not until afterwards that we realise that it's just a lot of little things that have
Yeah.
led to that. I think we did say it when we spoke about
Yeah.
meltdowns
Yeah.
before, like one thing on its own on a day where you're not already heightened probably would just be like,
Yeah.
okay, like that's not what I'd planned, but we'll move on. But
Yeah.
if it's a couple of things, which it was for you, because there was discussion and the presents, but also the fact that it's Christmas, which we spoke about on the last episode, is quite a heightened time. I don't think it was unreasonable. I think it was just you feel like you're overreacting when it's just your way of getting the overwhelm out, and you've not really had much of a outlet for that since you started your meds aside from like the
No.
anger.
And I mean, we've had quite a few because I've been quite angry since I started my meds, and we've had quite a few conversations of me and my fiance about how to communicate because when I am dysregulated, my dysregulation makes him dysregulated,
Mhm.
and it's really challenging because I can't talk when I'm dysregulated and on the brink of a meltdown, which I pretty much have been for quite a few weeks. And when you're in a heightened state and you're stressed and you're dysregulated, you can't turn around and reasonably say, "Oh, could you do this for me?" You would turn around and snap because that's
Mhm.
the only thing that you're able to do. So I try not to talk when I know I'm dysregulated. And I have been dysregulated a lot over the past few weeks. And because there's been times when I've had to say something to him, like that morning when I had the meltdown, he'd started putting the presents in the bags and I hadn't put the labels on them. And I just turned around and said, "No, we need to put the labels on them." And he felt like I'd shouted at him. And that was the literally the only way that I had to ask you because if I'd have let him do it and then passively aggressively just taken them all back out of the bags to put the labels on, then that would have not been good, So there wasn't really any way that I could win in that situation. But I knew that I would come across as if I was angry at him when I knew that he
Mhm.
was doing a really good thing. But it was the last straw for me. There's been so much in December with the meds and
Yeah.
with family stuff and with work and with my son and we'd had friends around the day before in the afternoon. So it was just a lot. Everything adds up, and it's never just the one thing. And we often feel like it's just the one thing. And the last thing we ever want is for that person to feel hurt, but there's no way to avoid it sometimes. And having that communication and understanding and ability to go back afterwards and say, "This is what happened." And apologize and own it, basically, own the fact that
Mhm.
it was a meltdown and you couldn't have done anything about it, but you appreciate that they would
I
have
think
felt.
often, like, people probably will forget that for us, it's like quite often knowing how to speak to somebody is a learned behavior, isn't it? Like, it's not something that comes naturally to you, which is why autistic people can often be called blunt. And when you don't have the capacity to mask how you're feeling, then
Yeah,
it will come out as bluntness, whereas other times, you're able to do that. It all just depends how many spoons that you've got to be able to do
yeah,
that bit of masking.
yeah. So that's been my week. Oh, it's not. I mean,
Mm.
Christmas. It's been nice. There's been some really nice times over the past few days. We always have a mixed grill on Christmas Day, and we got a really awesome present from one of our friends who is also a listener of the podcast, which is a great game called Pandora's something, and I've forgotten the bleeding name again. And it's basically solving the puzzle, solving the riddles through the game using a jigsaw. And that's really cool. So we did some of that on Christmas Day, and we're doing some more later this evening. And I bought a jigsaw puzzle mat that we can do the puzzle on and then we can roll it up. And it's just one of my most exciting things currently. So there's been some positives as well, but that's been my main hyper focus of Christmas week. So yay for that. How
I
about you,
think
Claire?
mine's just been, I knew that it was potentially likely to be overwhelming, and it was. So Christmas I had a headache, and I've had headaches every day since up until yesterday, and I think I'm just a bit drained from it all at this stage, which sounds really grinchy, but it's a lot more than I'm used to doing. Like we'd said, didn't we? When you think about the lead up to it, like we met in person for tea, didn't we?
We did last week. Yeah.
That there was a works Christmas do. Leaving the house times for me are like it's not every day. I work from home. I'm at home with the dog a lot in my downtime because my way of recharging is just to do nothing and be on my own and do what makes me feel better. And that's not what the previous week had been about in the lead up to Christmas. And then there's the whole being in places at certain times, having plans and things, which up until Christmas Eve, there wasn't really a finite plan for one reason or another as to where we'd be at what time, which didn't help me at all. And it's all stuff that you can learn from in the future, but the aftermath of it has been that I've just not really had a lot of. If it would have been up to me, maybe this episode would have been a spoonless episode, which is what we call episodes where everything just goes out of the window. And I think to an extent it is really, isn't it? Because we're not having like, usually we're reasonably structured, which you'll know if you have listened to our episodes before, but this one's giving ourselves a bit more grace. So I haven't really been doing a lot of chilling out and watching things and sleeping. And I got the newest Pokemon game for Christmas. I'd held off on buying it for myself because that's what I tend to do. If I want something, I'll tend to just buy it for myself. But I'm like to my husband, no, can you get it me for Christmas? Because then I know that I've told you something that I want. And I was so looking forward to coming home and playing that on Boxing Day, and then I just wasn't very well. But as soon as I was well enough, I've just sat and I've done about 6, 7 hours on it at this point.
Good.
And it's quite nice. You sort of like you're in another a bit of another world. It's a collecty thing as well. So if I have had a hyper focus the past couple of days, it's probably been my Pokemon game, and I think it's helped me.
So is that you go around and find all the Pokemon?
Yeah, so I think you probably enjoy it because there's a bit of a storyline as well. You arrive in a new place and then you get introduced to all these people and you're moving up through the ranks
No.
to be able to deal with this Pokemon related catastrophe that is happening in that town. That generally tends to be the format of it, and then you're battling people and you're battling Pokemon,
See,
but you can collect them as well.
I am a fan of Pokemon. I mean, if anyone's watching this on video, because we are on YouTube and the video
Mm.
is on Spotify, then I do have Psyducks, multiple plural Psyducks behind me because Psyduck is the best of all of the Pokemon. And I've watched a substantial amount of the Pokemon
I
show
think
and used to play Pokemon Go, but I've never actually played one of the Pokemon games like other than that. So it's probably something that I need to
I'd definitely recommend it. Maybe just get one of the older ones.
have a
They're
look
all
at.
reasonably similar format, and it's just been nice for me to be able to wander around and collect stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like a bit quite an immersive
Mm,
world. It's not just the collecting, it's like there's other bits to it as well. And so I
great.
recommend that.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
so before we move on to our rave, we have a rave at the beginning of the main segment. Normally we have the start, the hyperfocuses, the main segment, trait of the week, and then random crap at the end. But today we're not doing the trait of the week because there's traits mentioned in our main segment. But before we go into that, we will have a rave. It's only 10 seconds. And if you don't like raves, we're sorry. But before we do the rave, I just thought it was a good time to mention the title of the podcast. Because
Yes.
the way we name the podcasts is a Descript game. Descript is the piece of software we use to edit the podcast,
Hmm.
and it really gives us some amazing typos, descriptisms of what it thinks we've said, and that's how we name the podcast. Usually, last time it was the Christmas one, but in brackets it said pinch of soul.
Yes.
That was our descriptism of the week last time.
It
And
was a pinch of salt.
mm,
And I did look up where the pinch of salt was.
yeah, and it was
Oh, it was taking ChatGPT. ChatGPT. Have you used AI?
taking ChatGPT with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was my impression of Boris Johnson. For anybody that's never heard of that, I suggest you go and look at it because
I
my
have
husband
not.
had never heard it. It was on like, I don't think you watch a lot of live telly, do you? But there's a big fat quiz of the year. We watched it last night. It's basically things that have happened in the year, and that was one of the only things that I'd recognised that happened during the year.
I,
Boris Johnson just basically goes, I like using AI. Have you heard of AI? I use something called ChatGPT. ChatGPT. And my husband's like, surely he doesn't say it like that. And then they showed it and he does.
seen that.
And like ChatGPT.
I'll have to look that one up. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Oh, great stuff. I'll
Pinch
go and
of soul. If you'd
soul.
like to play along with our Descript game, I tend to write down all the descriptisms when we're editing and I put them in the show notes so you can identify them all. But if you don't want to do that and you just want to listen, that's okay as well.
Completely
We'd be
fine.
putting it there anyway.
Anyway, great. Rave. Are you ready for
Mhm.
a rave, Claire?
I'm never going to be more ready
I was going to say you've never looked more ready.
than I am right now.
Okay, so here we go. There we go. That's the rave done for another fortnight.
Yep.
That's our exercise.
Ooh.
So, today we're going to have a bit of a different main segment because why not?
Yeah.
It was Claire's anniversary on the 18th of December,
Hmm.
and we did speak in the last podcast briefly about Claire doing a 10 things that she has learned since her diagnosis. And then we
Mm.
decided, instead of just posting that on social media, that we would both do one and then talk about it in the podcast because it might be quite a nice one. And I think it's a really nice one to be the New Year episode. We've got a list of 20 things. There's a couple of them that are very similar, but most of them are different. So we've got a list of things that we're going to take it in turns to talk about. It's not like a top
Do,
10.
do,
We're not
do,
going to go
do.
back to the top 40 countdown days of April.
Coming
Um,
in at number 10, it's Steps. Wait, no.
Not today.
Okay.
Not sponsored by Steps.
But if they're listening,
Sponsor us.
sponsor us.
And thanks for the music. I know that was
Okay.
ABBA, but Steps as well.
If Abba's listening, I would quite like to go and see the holographic ABBA people, whatever it's called. I think it's called ABBA Voyage, isn't it? Not holographic ABBA people. But if they want to use that in the marketing, they're more than welcome.
They should call themselves that because it sounds exciting. So we've done these lists. It's the new year and it's a summary of things that we're grateful for knowing since our diagnoses or discoveries. There's a couple of mine that are mainly ADHD, specifically one, but that's because my ADHD came first, and I probably would say that I'm predominantly ADHD with the ADHD-ness, but a lot of them are autism based.
I think that the thing for me, why I thought it might be a good idea, is that essentially this podcast was me learning about being autistic as I go because I applied to be an autistic person and then thought, I'll think about that when in 3 years' time. And then it wasn't 3 years' time, it was 18 months. So I've sort of been learning on the job with being autistic as the job. And I think you have as well,
Yeah,
because it wasn't something you knew about, but B, because it is your job.
Yeah. I mean, I was working with autistic people before I'd identified my own autism. Like I'd,
So was I.
well, yeah, you were as well, yeah. But I did an autism awareness course and I just couldn't. Autism's often a harder pill to swallow. I think an ADHD is more of a pain in the bum when you're an autistic person. ADHD is harder to deal with than if you're not also autistic because you don't have the conflict that happens with autism and ADHD with the need for routine versus the complete and total inability to stick to routine. I thought that my autistic traits were just the way that I was, which is how it is for so many people. But yeah, it's an interesting one. So are we just going to dive in, shall we?
Mm,
So I'm starting
mm.
because your last point has to finish because it's the best one. So anyone that's just thinking about turning off, you have to stay all the way through this because the last point from Claire is the best one of all
But
of
you
them.
can have a little break if you need to because it is
Okay,
20 points. So if you need to
20.
pause it and go and make yourself a drink or
Have a wee.
let the dog out,
Yeah. Cheese.
yeah.
Cheese is a good way to pass time.
Have some cheese, do some star jumps.
Make sure you come back though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, point number one on our list. It's not just an excuse. Generally, a lot of people, when they are considering that neurodivergence might be an answer for them, autism, ADHD, or any other kind of neurodivergence, is what if I'm just making an excuse? But the important thing to acknowledge is that excuses don't really exist. If you're honest with yourself and you're not doing something that you want to do and you really want to do it, then there's always a reason why you can't. And if neurodivergence is that reason, then that is okay. Struggling with neurodivergent traits isn't you making an excuse for not being able to do things. So that's my first point.
And I think this is why we'd put these two together, isn't
Yeah,
it? Because it does link nicely with my first one, which is if you think you're neurodivergent, you probably are. If you're identifying with some of the traits, Emma's got a trait list for autism and for ADHD, and you're reading through it and you go, oh, yeah, 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 there's probably something to it. Each one of the traits, neurotypical people also struggle with,
yeah,
but the difference is that it is not as impactful on everyday life if you struggle with something so much, one of the traits, that it stops you doing other things
yeah.
persistently.
The one that I always use as an example for human nature is procrastination. And I know it's an ADHD trait more than an autistic trait, but if
Mm.
you everyone procrastinates, but if you're procrastinating to the point at which you are missing deadlines or working last minute to meet them and ending up paying late fines for things and whatnot, then it's an ADHD trait. It's not just normal
Mm.
procrastination, for hating the use of the word normal there, but it's not typical. So yeah, a lot of them are. And if
If
anyone's
it,
interested in the traits lists, they are free to download from navigatingneurodivergence.co.uk
I
forward
can
slash
put a link to it.
in the show notes. Yeah, absolutely.
The
If
traits are
anybody-
something that everybody experiences, but the difference is if it has a daily effect on your
yeah.
life, whether that be positive or negative.
If multiple traits have a significant impact on you and your life, then there is a strong chance. And it's okay to
Mhm.
call yourself neurodivergent without being specific about it as well. There's a lot in there to be said about the language, but for the sake of time, I will move on.
Mhm.
So, the second point for me is about labels. A lot
Mhm.
of people say, why would you want to label yourself or things like that? But labels are the negative things we say to ourselves earlier in life and through our lives, things that either we say to ourselves or other people have said to us, like lazy and gullible and awkward and all of those things. And having a diagnosis or self-diagnosis even of neurodivergence, whether that's ADHD or autism or anything else, that gives the explanation to give us the understanding and allow us to drop those labels that we've identified with or tagged on ourselves our whole lives. Lazy is one of the
Mhm.
biggest things, and gullible is a thing that I was always called and laughed at for, and now I know that that's down to taking things literally, as which is an autistic trait. There's so many things that are explained by neurodivergence that we have often beaten ourselves up for through our
Mm.
lives. So being able to drop the labels is something that has been insanely useful to me since finding
The
out.
negative labels, but my second point was that you don't need the label of being autistic or ADHD or ADHD or neurodivergent, but sometimes it helps you to explain to the world what you need. It's definitely been a lot easier for me to advocate for myself, being able to say that I'm autistic to other people and them understanding what that means than saying these are the struggles that I have and they are because I'm autistic. Is sort of a shorthand for it that it's similar to any medical condition that you would have. You can say, I've got this, and people go, oh, yeah, I know the sort of ways that will affect you, and here's what we can do to help you. Some people don't need the official diagnosis, and that's okay
Yeah,
because you can, like you said, still say to people that you're neurodivergent even if you don't have that official diagnosis. But sometimes having it on your medical record and being able to say, look, and not only to other people but to yourself as well, when you think about those labels like, oh, I'm just being lazy or I'm just late for everything and beating yourself up. Yes, I am like that, but if I had a mobility issue, for example, caused by a medical condition, I wouldn't be beating myself up about that as much because it's not something that I can control or that I can control with medication. It's similar for autism and ADHD. Once you know what that diagnosis is, there are ways that you can either medicate it in the case of ADHD or in the case of autism, find the coping strategies that are going to work with your type of brain.
yeah. There's so many ways. I mean, I know as soon as I got my diagnosis, having a psychiatrist say to me, yes, you have ADHD, I stopped saying, but what if it is just an excuse? And that's one of the
Mhm.
big reasons to go for a formal diagnosis is if you have that niggling, but what happens if I'm just making this up? And to have a professional say it can sometimes be very helpful, but not everybody needs that. And it can be a complete pain. The process is not an easy process to get an assessment.
It's not made for neurodivergent people, the process as it stands, really, is it? The
Bad.
waiting, for example, even the form filling and going to ask people for help is not typically a neurodivergent thing to do.
No,
But if you feel like it would help you, then
go for it.
go for it.
Point three.
Yeah.
It's okay to be the first person to talk about neurodivergence because talking about it helps others to be honest and to realize things about themselves. I mean, literally the day after I found out about ADHD, I started talking about it instantly because it resonated with me that much. And with ADHD, it's quite difficult sometimes to keep your mouth shut. I feel like it's burning a hole in my face, is what I feel like.
Mm.
Sometimes I need to say the thing. And it was such a massive thing for me. But nearly 5 years ago, it wasn't as commonly spoken about. And a lot of my friends and family were hearing about what ADHD actually looks like for the first time, and then later with autism, because
Mm.
there's so many stereotypical views, which I'm going to talk about later. But it's really useful to be able to talk about it when, if you can, and to be honest and open, because you're likely to be around other people who are neurodivergent, which is another point that comes later, maybe. So that's my point three.
Which is similar to my
Yes.
point three, which was that speaking about your experiences helps others. Something that you say about your experience as a neurodivergent person might trigger something in somebody else to recognize that in themselves. And I know that there's a few people since I've been diagnosed, and people that listen to this podcast or listen to me speak about things that have gone, oh, I didn't realize that autism was like that. It's made me consider possibly pursuing a diagnosis myself.
Yeah.
Every person that speaks up about their experience of being neurodivergent helps dispel some of the stereotypes that there is just one type of autism, one type of ADHD, because scientists and psychologists are still learning about presentations of these conditions, and things have moved on so much in even the past 5 years Um, and that's why people are now saying, oh, well, you never heard about it. In my day, there's so many people being diagnosed. Yes, because they're recognizing people's experiences in themselves and realizing that it's applicable to themselves.
I
Um,
couldn't even get a dual diagnosis until 2013, which is only 12 years ago. It was either ADHD or autism. Until very recently, it's been very difficult to get a dual diagnosis, and
mm,
very few places offer it as a dual. You have to go down one pathway and then you have to go down the other. It's not a combination. Yeah, it's important to spread awareness and to normalize. And the more people that talk about it, the more normal it is. Okay,
yeah.
so next, point four for me is I have learned to appreciate that the routines I have are there for a reason. I'm going to use food as an example because it's the first one that springs to mind. But when you eat certain things in a certain order or a certain way, and that's how you like them. When I was younger, it was me being awkward, how I needed to have my apples peeled and cored and couldn't have any of the hard bits anywhere near them. And it's been laughed at in that when I have a box of chocolates, I have to sort them out and make sure that there's the same number of each kind of chocolate left in the box as
Mm.
I eat them. I have to eat them in rounds, and that's just all there is to. I can't just have one chocolate. I have to have a set. Otherwise, it just wouldn't be right. But that is all about creating safety and control in a world that we don't have control over so many things. At least you can control something and you can make something safe if you are doing things in the way that feels right to you and only you. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter if it makes logical sense to anyone else, knowing that there's a reason for that. And no matter what it looks like to anyone else, it's okay to do.
My point four was that asking for what you need shouldn't be an inconvenience for other people. So, with your food stuff, asking for things to be peeled and cored shouldn't be an inconvenience for somebody else if it makes things better for you. But sometimes you feel like things are an inconvenience, and asking for what you need is an inconvenience. I've had a lot of work stuff this year where I've said I need this, this, and this to be able to feel comfortable, and I've needed that in other roles before, but never asked for it because I didn't want to seem like I was a problem or difficult. But realizing that the world isn't built with neurodivergent brains in mind, it makes sense. You should be allowed to ask for things to help it work for you because you're already at a disadvantage to neurotypical people
Yes,
who've built that world that we exist in. But in the same way as you would ask for help with any disability, it's okay to ask for help with your neurodivergence to be able to
yeah.
do things more easily.
It's not giving you an advantage. It's not having
Mm.
special treatment. It's not anything like that. It is simply a matter of putting yourself on a level playing field and giving yourself
Mhm.
the same chance as people that don't have the same struggles.
And it's not something to feel guilty about either. I mean, you do still feel guilty because a part of trying to fit in is just not to be perceived or seen. And
Mhm.
sometimes saying, I need this or I need that is a bit like putting your head above the parapet
Yeah.
and being perceived. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't ask for things that you need because other people will ask for things that they need without thinking.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, point five is a bit more of an ADHD one, but one of the biggest things that's had an impact on my life is adding in the time for transitions. So ADHDers specifically don't feel the passage of time and don't automatically leave time for getting ready and leaving the house. It's like you can just click your fingers and be from your desk into your car and like driving away. And so if I need to leave at 5 o'clock, I will stand up at 1 minute to five, and then I'll have to go to the toilet and find my shoes and find my coat and find my bag and do all of those other things. And having the awareness that that happens and knowing that I have to manually add that time in. Now, if I'm leaving the house to go anywhere, I always put however long it takes to drive plus 15 minutes in my calendar. It always starts early, and then I have to put the time of the appointment so that I don't forget that I've allowed myself that time because it's still alien to me. And if I turned up early anywhere, then that would be the worst thing in the world to me. But it's such a waste of time. Anyway, so yeah, the knowledge that transitions exist and that you're allowed to make time for them. And if you are an autistic person who struggles to transition from task to task, knowing that's a struggle and building that time in as well, like going from being a parent in
Mm.
parent mode to being in work. And there's a lot of people sit and freeze in their cars outside the house, for example, before going in. But if you plan for that to happen and you know that's part of the time that you need, then you can work around it rather than expecting yourself to not need that time to do things. So that's my point five.
My point five is that needing hibernation days isn't lazy because life as a neurodivergent person can be exhausting. Thinking is a lot, and you do a lot of it. Not everyone needs to put the effort in that you do just to get through simple things. I used to work 3 on, 3 off, and all my 3 days off, I would just spend hibernating, not doing a lot. I couldn't think about going shopping, going out and socializing, all that sort of thing. I mean, quite often I wasn't very well on those days. I just like fluked, and I used to think, am I just lazy? Am I just not resilient? And when you think about it in terms of needing to recharge after those experiences and the effort that it takes to have those experiences, as lovely as they can be, it's not laziness, it's how you build yourself back up again to be able to do what you need to do. Even just the other day on Boxing Day, I was laid in bed and I was getting myself really upset, thinking to myself, oh, I'm wasting Boxing Day here, and saying to my husband, oh, I'm really sorry. And he's like, but you need this today. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, I do. I need it to be able to like recover is the wrong word because it makes it seem like it was a negative experience, but you don't think about it unless you think about it, that you're constantly thinking about every aspect, every conversation that you're going to have, where you're going to be at what time,
It's
and what you
recharging,
can
isn't it?
do next.
Sometimes you do have to recover from positive experiences, and that's something that you have
But
to
that's,
learn as a neurodivergent person, that you have to recover from positive experiences
but
as well as negative ones because of the social energy.
you often, or at least I will often think, well, compare myself to someone else. Why don't they need to do that? And that's potentially because their
Yeah.
brains aren't as busy as my brain is.
Mhm.
And the effort of masking as well.
Yeah.
Not that I mask as much anymore, but that's energy consuming in itself.
Yes.
So, yeah, recognizing that you need that and it's okay, and the reasons for that has been a big thing for me.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Five, we're
Number
halfway
six.
through.
So halfway through. Number six, having the understanding of the autistic burnout I had as a teen. So I didn't really attend school in year 10. When I was 15, I had quite severe autistic burnout, which I didn't realize was autistic burnout until I was reading Heidi Mavia's book, which is called Your Child Is Not Broken, which was my smack in the face revelation that, oh, yeah, actually, maybe I am autistic after I'd been recommended to go for an autism assessment by the NHS, and why I dropped out of college. I dropped out of 3 colleges in 4 months when I was 16, and I had basically felt like my entire life I was trying to prove that I wasn't a failure and that I could make a success out of my life. I had a successful bookkeeping business by the time I was 30, being able to understand why it was hard rather than think I was just flaking and just dropping out and being a failure is massive. Knowing that if you're not a person that is going to succeed and thrive in college, there are other paths. And knowing that if you want to do something, you can do it in your own way. You don't have to do the things in the same way as what you have been told to be able to make them a success. And neurodivergence is the reason, again, not the excuse. Having that hindsight as a late diagnosed adult, being able to go back through my life and think that was ADHD, that was autism, that was the combination, to go through and unpick stuff is a big task, but it's very validating and reassuring and helpful
Mm,
to have been able to do that. So that's my point six.
yes. And my point six is it's okay not to do the thing. So again, it is a little bit linked. we say yes to things, we struggle to say no. We will give 100% when some other people might give 70%, and that is what's expected. But prioritizing yourself and your needs is allowed. You don't have to give 100% all of the time. People don't expect that. And it's okay if you don't want to do something to say that you don't want to do it. There will generally be the next time. And if you're going to say yes to something and not enjoy it or spend all of the time feeling awful, then who is it benefiting?
Yeah.
That's point number six for me.
Point number seven, self-acceptance. So having the awareness of neurodivergence has allowed me to accept that it's okay to be myself. I always described myself as a beige as a teenager, and in my 20s, I hid behind friends. I followed the crowd. I never really did the things that I would have maybe wanted to do. Given the chance, I hid a lot of my nerdy side. And as a teenager, I spent a lot of my time after school doing my jigsaw in my room with my music on, letting my brain just go off and do its merry thing. And now I understand that that was recharging. And I was really ashamed and embarrassed of spending my life doing jigsaws when I was like 13, 14, 15. It was always like a thing that old ladies do. It's had such a negative stigma attached to it in my head that I would never have admitted to my friends and other people around me that weren't my family and could see me doing it, that I couldn't really deny it, that that's what I did and that's what I needed. And to know now, since I met my fiance, we do jigsaws together, we play board games, we have board game nights with friends. And for me to be part of that circle and be able to be confident enough to say, this is okay, there is nothing wrong with liking those things. I kind of had always felt like I shouldn't. And that's been a big knowing that who I am and the thing like the things that I like and do the things that I like to do is okay. It's like it's kind of the reverse of what your point six was. It's okay to not do the thing if you don't want to, but also it's okay to do the things that you want to do, even if they're not the things that the mass of society thinks is cool. So that's my point seven.
So mine, neurodivergent people find each other because we get each other. So you will find people that have similar interests to you. For example, how myself and Emma met, that we met on a forum that was initially set up because of a teletext page. How do we explain teletext pages to people that don't know what they are?
Go and
I don't
Google the
Google it
time.
because we haven't got time for that now.
You can listen to episode
We,
one of our podcast
I
where we
don't think
talk.
that, does that explain what teletext is?
I can't remember, but it explains the community.
Yes. So you will find a community, and then as neurodivergence is becoming more understood, we're finding that a lot of people that were in that community, including ourselves, are receiving diagnoses of autism and ADHD and ADHD and all kinds of neurodivergent things because you found a community, you found a group of people that understand that some of the things like liking jigsaws, liking Pokemon, liking teletext pages are accepted by those people because we get each other and we understand that it's okay to have those interests and not to necessarily question those. And sometimes it's easier to discuss those interests than to learn how to be sociable with people because you've got the common interest, for example, of Pokemon or jigsaws. You can talk about those things, and especially if it's a special interest to you, you could just talk forever about.
Yeah.
Whereas small talk is hard and it can be a lot, it's not a thing that tends to matter so much in neurodivergent communities, but you don't necessarily realize that you're in a neurodivergent community
Until you do.
until you do. Then we said that autistic people are like geese because
Talking about
neurodivergent people. Yeah.
yeah, whether geese
And
are
it's
autistic
true because we find each other, it's like a magnet.
flocking together like geese, magnets and lobsters.
Geese or
Anyway,
magnetic geese.
yes. There's probably some geese magnets somewhere. I'll have to have a look on Etsy. Can
Yeah,
have
not
some
very well.
custom made. That'll be the Tism geese magnets. Coming soon to a store near you. Maybe. You never know.
Mm.
So, point 8. Nearly there. Stay open-minded. This is about stereotypes because there's so much of a stereotypical image of what autism looks like, and ADHD to a degree, but mainly autism. By adulthood, we all have an idea of what autism looks like. We have usually experienced either in school or in our families or someone around
Mm.
is autistic, and we have associated them and their experience with autism, and it's often very different from our own experience. And so to accept that autism can look like you is a big pill to swallow. We don't all fit in the same boxes. This whole, when you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. We all
Mm.
struggle with the traits in different ways and to different levels. I mean, that's why it's called a spectrum. A spectrum
Mm.
isn't a linear spectrum, it's more like with different colours dotted all over. It's not as straightforward. So it's really important to keep an open mind that how your experience of autism is not necessarily someone else's. And that doesn't mean that they're not autistic. It just means that they have a different experience and everyone is different. It's really eye-opening when you realize that autism isn't what you thought it was. And
Mm.
it's a really big identity shift for a lot of people to
Mm.
be able to accept that in themselves and that there's nothing bad about being autistic, really. It's just different way of looking at things.
And my number 8 is that some of the things that you think are annoying about yourself aren't or may not be. Some things might be annoying. You can't just assume that all of your autism isn't annoying because sometimes it is. But someone will appreciate and value things like organization and pedantry.
Yeah.
uh, People won't always find the fact that you want to use a spreadsheet for everything or that you're really organized annoying. They will look at that and potentially think, well, that's somebody that's going to have that attention to detail, and I haven't got that. So someone will appreciate those skills and value them, and you should as well. You shouldn't always think that everything about your autism is annoying. I mean, we say autism is a superpower or it's my superpower. Parts of it can be if you have the ability to hyper focus on something or to have a really good attention to detail on things, it is a strength.
Yeah.
And where we look at autism and neurodivergence as potentially being weaknesses, you also have to look at all the things that you've achieved in spite of the weaknesses and how some of your strengths have contributed towards that. And that's definitely not something that I had thought until I was diagnosed so much. How you do have those strengths there as well, and because your brain works in a different way, you will be able to contribute something that someone else won't be able to.
Yeah. The amount of times I post something on social media and I get a message from Claire saying, Emma, did you know you've put the wrong date in this? Or your date doesn't match your image.
Mm.
And, just thought it might be useful for you to know. It's very useful to have a friend who does that.
But I used to always say to my husband, oh, do you think that I should tell Emma about this?
Yes.
The traits list was one of them, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think we've spoken about it before. Do you think I should tell her about this? I
Sent
was
you it
like, well,
literally
you
for that
should.
reason,
I
so you
know,
can
but you'd
read it.
already shown it to several other people.
I hadn't noticed.
And I was like, well, those people aren't me. Sometimes your perceived annoying parts will be appreciated by other people and valued by them.
Even envied by them, potentially. There's definitely things that I've done in the past that people have said to me, how do you do that? And now I can say,
Mm.
it's ADHD, mate. And that's how I do
Mm.
it. It's not necessarily something you want, but this is a benefit. So, yeah, there are definitely strengths. Okay,
Mm.
so point 9, the penultimate point for me is
Mm.
learning that
Oh.
everyone is working from their own map or from their own perspective. So it's not always about me. Generally, because of rejection sensitivity and how insular we are and how generally we overthink everything that we do in any situation, we tend to assume that everything that happens around us is because of us or directly relating to us, when in fact, most of the people around us, if not all of them, are acting in their own best interests and from their own perspective. When people get upset, it's like when we were talking about meltdowns. I know that when I'm having a meltdown, I'm only stressed about the meltdown, and yet everyone around me thinks I'm annoyed at them because I'm speaking from that tone. So it's like understanding that everyone is approaching things from their own way and from their own perspective, and that most things are not about you unless they are stated clearly to be about you. Even if someone cancels a lunch date or a meeting or whatever, it's likely to be because of their own situation rather than because they hate you. So that's an
Mhm.
important thing to acknowledge for my point nine.
So, point nine, learn to recognize the rumination spiral and put things in place to stop it in its tracks. Tell everyone what they need to tell you or do for you and try and break the cycle. And that one's something that's definitely helped me. We spoke about it in whatever episode it was that I'd been to Benidorm, and
Rumination.
I'd got some of my things stolen. And I spoke about it last episode when I spoke about ChatGPT. Um, but
Oh, episode 14, similar to Tom
yeah.
Cat.
But episode 14 then, when I spoke about my Benidorm situation and what I told my mum because I knew that I was spiraling, and if I spiraled again, this is what you tell me. And last episode, which was episode 18, where I spoke about ChatGPT. You'll learn what works for you to stop the rumination in its tracks. And whereas the general consensus of CBT is the worry cycle and stopping the worry cycle, we experience anxiety in different ways as neurodivergent people because of rumination in part, and it's important to try and come up with your own strategies to stop it in its tracks and break the cycle, whatever you need to do.
Okay, my last point, my number 10, is about
Mm,
pride. So often when you get a diagnosis, it's like, what if? If only I'd known. What if I'd known all of the other stuff that comes with life could have been so different? But you have to look at what you have achieved and understand that you have accomplished everything in your life whilst silently managing a hidden disability without your knowledge.
mm,
And so everything that you have achieved in your life, you've done by working twice as hard as others that have achieved the same. So it's really important to acknowledge that you've accomplished those things in spite of your neurodivergence. And sometimes because of it, it will have likely aided you in some way, shape, or form. And to work on being proud of your achievements and acknowledging that it's okay to be proud of things. And pride is a
mm,
funny thing with neurodivergence. It's often something that feels icky. I mean, it being British as well is part of that, but with neurodivergence, pride comes with pressure. If you are proud of
mm,
something, if you say, yes, this is brilliant, and other people turn around and say, why? Then that's rejection. And it's tricky. It's a tricky one to navigate, but it is really important to acknowledge that everything you've done in your life, you have done that with neurodivergence. And so well done for getting this far and good luck for the future. That's
mm.
me finishing.
Yes. And then the final one is from me. It's not always the tism, but a lot of the time it is. Which I think all of those points lead into, and it's just nice to know. Well, no, maybe it's not nice to know. It's not always the tism, but a lot of the time it is.
Yes. It's important though, because it links back to excuses, I guess, in a way, because saying that you can't put everything down to autism, well, no, you can't put everything down to autism because we've all got autonomy and we've all got choices that we can make. But a lot of the reason that why we make the choices we make in life and we struggle with the things we struggle with and we do the things that we do is because of the tism. So,
Yes. Even if it's in a minuscule way, a lot of our
yeah,
lives, because everything is processed through your brain, which
yeah,
is autistic.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yes.
And there finishes our epic main segment of
Mm,
epicness. So you're welcome. Well done for sticking through it.
thanks for bearing. We hope you found the main segment useful.
Yes, lots of
Um,
information.
mm,
All of those points and more either have been or will be discussed in further detail on the podcast. So that's the main segment. I think all we really need to do is talk a little tiny bit about starfish.
but do we speak about starfish this time?
All I need to do is say there's a starfish that looks like it has a bum called the big butt starfish. Go and Google it.
Right.
There we go. That's it. That's the end.
Okay.
And we don't need to
So
give any more facts. If you want to
they
reach
are,
out to us for any reason,
yeah.
be that to give us your opinions and your feedback, or animal facts, or questions about autism, or your own life story, to talk about whatever, we are happy to hear from people either through direct message on social media or via email at that'llbethetism@gmail.com. And links to all of our socials can be found at linktr.ee/ that'll be the tism. You're doing your
Yes.
slashes again. You are, aren't you? Yeah. You've started doing slashes every time. It's
Yeah.
distracting me less now, which is helpful because to start with, I was very confused. I thought you were doing a little dance for no
Maybe
reason.
I am.
Maybe you are.
It's just a thing that I do now for our viewers.
It's nice to do slashes for the viewers, but we're not that kind of podcast.
So
Thank
rate
you.
us on your preferred podcast provider
Or
because it
YouTube.
helps us to be found by other people
Yes, it does.
so that we can talk to them.
And if you're watching on YouTube, then please like and subscribe.
Just
And
do what you want to do. And if that is following us and telling other people about us, that would be really nice.
and we're leaving it with we may be back in 2 weeks or we may be back in 3 weeks.
Why?
Because on the 12th of January, I am having a filling.
Oh, yeah.
So we may have to leave it an extra gap, but we'll see how we go. I'm going to give it a good crack,
Mm.
but there is a chance that it may be 3 weeks before you get your next
Yeah.
Tism fix. But there's 18 other episodes for you to listen to if should you
They'll
require.
probably still be listening to this episode then.
That's probably true, yeah. It's only
You
2 weeks
know.
away. Absolutely.
Put it on 0.5 and it'll last you
Oh
an
my
extra
God,
week.
just imagine.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Have a nice time.
Bye.